baby, do what I should, babe. Point, point, baby, do what I could, babe. Point, point, baby, do what I should, babe. Point, point, baby, do what I could, babe. Point, 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 baby, do what I should, babe. Point, baby, do what I could, babe. Point, 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 baby, do what I should, babe. Point, point, baby, do what I could.
I have outsmoked this land, and it has cost me everything. I am asking, praying to you, the smoke dragons, send me back. I have left my clan of smoke behind for far too long. All of my fellow smoke ninjas, they're waiting for me, holding on when all hope is now dwindled. They're still grasping, even in my absence right now as I kneel and pray. Just send me back, so I may rejoin my clan of smoke and light up with all of my fellow smoke ninjas once again.
Watch me and I change, I'll stay the same. Have me losing my mind. Said the city is mine. I ain't never represent me. Ain't do no wrong. I can clean up good for you. I know right from wrong. 'Cause I wanna make it. I'm a $1 million baby. Don't let me
What's up? It's Mick. It's been a while, but here I am, just about alive and breathing. I have communed with the ancestral spirits of the smoke dragons, and they've agreed to forgive and reverse my infernal, monumental sins of abandonment. I'll get more into that later, but for now, I've got to undertake this dragon pilgrimage so I can properly repent, and hopefully then this nightmare will be over and I can actually bring you guys some truly great smoke spots. But until then, here's my dragon pilgrimage. So without further ado, let's jump right in. Unfolding in at spot number 10 is the first step stupor. This is the first stop on the dragon pilgrimage in the crumbling Farum Azula. Although we are discussing smoke spots here, I would like to recommend you don't smoke at any of these dragon pilgrimage spots unless you are truly well versed in the smoke arts. This area gives you an overlook of the ancient architecture that litters the lines of the sky that so often sounds slashed by the whirring wings of the double dozen decennial dimensions of death-daring dragons. Take heed when you light up here on your first steps, because if you start to feel too hazy, that monstrous tornado will surely begin to feel like it's beckoning you towards its twisted heart, ending your sesh in a windy wake. But for those of you who are more than capable with the toxic muscly, this small step will grant you some breeze that feels fresh on the face and contrasts well with the smoky inhales. This is merely the first step though, so if this stop is too much for you, I can only give you my deepest prayers and sobering medicines to keep your head on straight. But let's keep moving. I've got more repenting to do. Twisting in at number 9, we find Greengrave's Dark Days. This is our next stop, where once we saw this rough gust, we now witness the terrible twister in its entirety. Along this curved platform lies an entire graveyard of the outsmoked. As you light up next to the bones, you can almost feel the air passing through their nostrils, inviting in the green dreams even from beyond their open graves. This is a somber spot, however, as these once smoky individuals are granted no peace, with the daylight being entirely blocked out by the spinning core of all the dragon's accumulated smoke, tirelessly turning upon the rim of this world's end. Well, I don't mean to disturb these ghosts any longer, so I'll keep moving. Calming down at number 8, we have the Doobie of Destiny and Despair. Some of you out there who want to follow along on this dragon pilgrimage will be doing so out of your own free will. Exploring this timeless temple to experience some tremendous trips will feel like your destiny, and to those I can only praise your luck and wise choices. But for the rest of us, we'll be stopping here for the despair side of this area. So if you're anything like me, you'll be watching over the greatest mistake you've ever had the displeasure of making. Burning up the ultimate tree, only to find not every leaf is meant to be smoked, and furthermore, not every tree is meant to be burned. From here, the violent smoke rumblings will be behind you, leaving you alone with just your thoughts and whatever strain you brought the smoke up. I can imagine for many of you that sounds pleasurable, but for the sinners of us, this is just another stake to our green hearts that seek forgiven beats on our dragon-commanded passage. Let's move forward. Floating on at number 7 is Litty Low Gravity. This stop on the pilgrimage may be up your alley if you're quite the adventurous type who likes parkour mixed in with your sessions. This area is made up entirely of platforms and sideways walls that create a trippy looking environment that's perfect to scale up ledges and find cool corners to sit and smoke. As for why this area, and many other places like it, seem to operate under their own rules of gravitation, I can't say. But what I can say is that of all the dragon pilgrimage spots so far, this is going to be one of the more universally enjoyable ones. Just make sure, especially if you're flying high, to watch your step on this one. Paying respects at number 6, we stop by Supercalifragilistic Burning Joint Sarcophagus. Within the remains of this smoke hero is a budding flower, left behind for any smoke dragons or trudgers of this pilgrimage to take from and use to light up in the memory of the hero, whoever they were. Not much is remembered about their identity, as their history has been lost with the crumbling of this great fortress. Yet it is still within the demands of the smoke dragon spirits that we pay respects to this smoke hero. I don't know your name, I don't know your strain, but we smoke together all the same. Rest well in clouds of smoke, hero. Moving on to spot number 5, we have the Split Pillar Spliff. Now, if you're following along with me, you'll have realised by now that these dragon pilgrimage spots are chronological. As in, this is the exact order in which you'll find the spots if you just proceed along the given pathway. However, if these were ranked on subjective quality like my other lists, then I'd say this would be number 1 for me. The subdued and unassuming area out the back of this building is the perfect place to take a rest and hit from a good bud. Looking around, you'll find the open skies out on one side, whereas on the other, you'll see the exposed inner halls of what once was this steadfast structure. Yet having its paths revealed to the open air as they are, gives it a newfound sense of connectedness under the shade of a greater rocky roofing. Something about this place in particular, just perfectly contrasting the bright outsides with the constructed and shaded insides reminds me of taking a seat inside some place to cool off on a warm day. Not to mention, the symbolic split pillar of this spot not only marks the two halves of the views either side of the pillar, but also that this falls directly in the middle of our smoky pilgrimage, marking the halfway point and drawing a divide between the first struggling path and the second, more hopeful, recovering path. One split end represents the roof that the pillar used to be able to hold up, and upon breaking across its center, it seems to be of no actual use anymore. However, the other split end represents the pillar that, while split and now only half the size, still remains on the same ground and continues to stand regardless. For us sinners of smoke, this is likely one of the most symbolically important spots in the pilgrimage for our repentance and recovery. Encased at number 4 we have the Entombed Fumes. This area can first be spotted from this lonesome and dark overlooking balcony, giving an appropriately grim look downwards at the area ahead. Now most people know this room for its primary use, which is the arena for the Godskin duo who claim this room as their hunting grounds to outsmoke you and then steal all your good stuff when you're down. Of course, I'm on this passageway to repent for sins I've committed of abandonment of my clan, and even greed and overindulgence of smoke, which has led me to make decisions I highly regret. I've probably seen more blood than smoke at this point. Even with all that said, I can still say for certain that the Godskin duo in this room are both bad news, and they must be dealt with when you find them here, if you haven't dealt with them already. But once this room is clear, you are free to use it as the next stop on the pilgrimage to Light Up. The graves here are filled with the remains of more rich dwellers than before, with their bones lying dead next to their gold and riches. Let this be a warning to all of you smoke ninjas, wizards and dragons out there. No amount of material good can save you from the cruel fates and hell's gates. Only treading a path of wisdom and care can save you from the dark despair. So, as you smoke diligently and carefully in this room, remember that the smoke itself isn't everything. For if you cannot live without the smoke, then you cannot live as free as the smoke. Stemming out at spot number 3 is the Gloomy Garden's Golden Glow. Sealed behind a shrouded gate is an elevator that will raise you up to this lost and forgotten ground. Of all the areas so far, this place seems to be the most intact, and yet its still standing structures manage to emphasize the lack of life left in this gone by gorgeous garden. The groundskeepers and gardeners that were left here are now nothing more than husks of the undead that still try to defend the garden from outsiders, failing to see that all of their work and its beauty has been reduced to dust and sand in this airy land. But not all hope is lost. I mentioned a golden glow when naming this spot, and that's because with the power of smoke, this place can reobtain its magic and wonder, as fleeting as it may be. Amidst all the rubble and old dead trees is the sprouting stem of a tremendous tree. Its golden hue and faint glow is a remarkable indicator that life can still exist where it seems all is lost. So upon taking a seat here, you may pluck a small twig from one of its branches to imbue the rest of your rolled up leaves, which is likely to give a hearty oak-filled taste to the blunt that boasted. And with any luck, your high and remaining morale should be boosted with golden hope, just like the ignited wand in your hand. Freshly breezing at spot number 2 is the Wind-Lit Windows. Be warned, the distance between this spot and the previous one is larger than any of the others so far. That is because the final push in recovery often has less frequent, yet more rewarding milestone markers. Once you've gotten past a rough roundup of reinforcements, you'll enter a hallway towards this. A room not lit by candles nor fires, but by the gracious rays of white light that race through every open window and crack just like the wind does by its side. The rounded shape of the window-wearing wall reminds us that everything in life, including life itself, is all going around and around in cycles. If you find yourself falling back into the evergreen of addiction with the green smoke, it merely means the cycle begins anew, and your recovery can begin once again. And there are those who will be encountering addiction for the first time, and may think that they aren't part of the cycle since they've never been the whole way around it before. But even as stubborn as that thought process might be, let me remind you that the first time you venture to enter this regal rounded rotunda, you must pass through the dark hallway that, in itself, still cracks in the light from this cycle. If you're here for purely the sake of an enjoyable pathway of spots to smoke at, then go ahead and light up while basking in this glorious room. But if you are here past recovery, going through recovery, or repenting for your past like me, then you'll want to be more toned down on this spot because, while its symbolism and meaning is for good and for the betterment of ourselves in these areas, it doesn't outright give you permission to throw it all away just because it means well. So be careful and use your head when you encounter this spot. Now, at spot number 1 to finish out this Smoke Dragon pilgrimage is none other than the Final Forgiveness Free Bowl. This is it, you've made it. But it does not come so easily as that. The pilgrimage up to this point has been quite a trek, sure, but you will face the monumental embodiment of sin and regret that guards this final stop on the path. I cannot show the boss myself because I've conquered it, overcome my regrets and failures, outsmoked by smoking greed. And even then, it is said that some of those who will face the greatest repentance will face a different opponent, a different creature, a waking nightmare. But once you too can face it and emerge victorious, you'll be able to rejoice and use this final spot, as you will finally be forgiven for your transgressions and smoke crimes. The symbol on the wall at the end actually signifies the roots of the trees that we use to light up. What's even more awe-inspiring about this place though is the decoration, which you'll notice is mostly just filled with bones. And here's where I must unveil the stark importance of this final smoke spot. Every single time someone takes this pilgrimage and manages to cleanse themselves of their prior treachery, they not only are figuratively a new person, but a literal physical replica of their skeleton is formed using the dust and sediments of ash and stone from the area. These bones then appear within every display along the walls, so much to the point that they've moved on to just piling the false corpses into totems, 3 of which have been fully complete, and 5 more are in the works right now. This shows you how many people out there could be in the same situational journey as yourself, and if all these other people can make it, then you can too. Smoke up and recover well, Smoke Ninjas. Now that I've repented myself under the command and guidance of the great Smoke and Doobie Dragons, it's time to really get to the smoke spots. And you know what? As a cleansed and clean new man, I can't think of a better guide to being a ninja this time around than the good old faithful Ninja Turtles. Michelangelo especially, because he just is the coolest one. He's literally the chillest one. So I'm taking a page out of their book and donning myself with a turtle shell, as well as my fresh ninja attire. Shell, yeah. Let's smoke this shit.
You must have been mistaken with them statements that you make, huh?
Ain't nobody don't miss me. I'm just so fresh, so
Fresh and so clean, clean.
Don't you think I'm so sexy? I'm just so fresh,
So fresh and so clean, clean.
Ain't nobody don't miss me. I'm just so fresh,
So fresh and so clean, clean.
I love when you stare at me. I'm
This is it, all my dear Smoke associates. This is the start of the Elden Smoke Journal, where we will be documenting each step of our smoke journey as we explore this world and train ourselves to master the smoke arts. If you're willing to smoke by my side, then I need not waste any more time preempting this smoky quest. So grab your stuff and let's roll out. At spot number 15, we have the Godrip Soldier's Gulf. Inside the cave of our awakening, we explore its depths, cracks and crevices. We do have some green neutralizing boluses that we could grind up and put to use, but this place is a little too mysterious and who knows what smoke opponents might lie around any of these corners. But luckily, we press on to find a living, breathing obstacle. Beyond the yellow cloud, a soldier of Godrip. Finally, something worth engaging. After we make a display of power and outsmoke our obstacle, we now have a perfect chance to reward ourselves with a grassy bunch. Inside this gulf we can admire the vengeance we've granted to these fallen fighters from the past. The brief relaxation kicks in as we look on to the ingrowing outside nature that breaks the cave's desolation with greenery and sunlight. Soon that sun will shine upon the rest of our greatly chill smoke spots. Preceding the sunlight at spot number 14, we have the Dragon Ball Tea. Before we can seek more adventure outside of our cave, we must first find a dormant power that rumbles in the rocks beneath us. As we find a sealed statue gate, we must engage its mechanisms and get past. Once we have found ourselves in the poison pit below, we must then outrun this steel chariot that moves endlessly with the soul of smoke inside it. Finally, at the bottom of this temple, we will encounter a dragon spirit known as Smoku. And although it's no easy task, he must be outsmoked. After his defeat, we can realize what he's been protecting. These Dragon Balls. These tall hung, gross testicular growths are a strange sight to behold, but these aren't merely just balls. These are actually giant forbidden fruits. Smoku used these Dragon Balls to make spicy herbal tea, but he fell into an ulcerating addiction with it. Smoku is laid to rest where he may now undertake his own dragon pilgrimage of repentance. Even some remnant of his soul remains in order to guide us back to the path of freedom. For seeing our future endeavours at spot number 13, we have Huffing with the Hunchback. As we leave our cave and stop by at the church ahead, we can find a merchant sitting by his fire. It's nice to see someone who isn't calling us maidenless.
However, you are maidenless, without guidance, without the strength of runes, and without an invitation to the round table hold.
In fact, he hints at a steed beyond the trees. By following his advice to this side of grace, we can obtain a magic horse companion. This journey is already seeming more full of life. We head back to the merchant and buy up some of his wares as a thank you. Moving outward past the church, we spot another person over yonder who could definitely use some advice on their posture. As we approach, however, we see that this person is just a statue. It looks out towards the exaggeratingly jagged coastal cliffs donning a towered fortress. It's certainly quite a unique visual, and I know if I was a statue, this is the statue I'd want to be. It's a perfect place to light up our first joint in this sprawling free world. As a final note, I'd like to point out the statue's open hand carrying a little bowl. It's supposedly able to grant you good luck if you leave a little weed in there for this hollow hunchback. Expanding at number 12 is the Dragon Communion Doobie Connection. Our last spot gave us a good look at what lay ahead, but there's more to these cliffs than the future. There is also, more pressingly, the present presence of a paradigm for paradise. That is, if you consider an island of Doobie Dragon Communion to be paradise. Searching the beach reveals to us an opening on the cliff wall to a cave. This pathway is dwelled with gang occupation, the members of which try to outsmoke us to prevent us from proceeding. However, they're no match for the Clan of Smoke.
Have mercy.
Emerging victoriously from the other side, we observe our new standing on this detached mound of land. The main shelter of this area is the broken and rubbled church, whose days hosting smoke gatherings are long past. This, however, does not mean that it will be forgotten, as we do our duty to keep the spirits alive while we remain here, blazing it next to the very same dormant dragon that sentences the smoke sinners of us to repent. Oh, and apparently the red flame that burns in this bowl was lit precisely to be a free boof booster when it's used to light up the end of your rollie. I say, give it a try. I think it'll be worth your while. Provoking thought at number 11, we have the paper pulls at the philosophy pillars of plenty. After smoking enough on the Dragon Island, we look towards where we came from only to find the rowdy ruined remains of a lost structure. Pinpointing its location, we travel back to the mainland to explore its footprint. Arriving at this chiseled edge reinforces the scale of these remains. And upon scanning the shapes in the walls, we find a way down to the grass-laden platform. Looking out, the island from before becomes smaller, as if the joints that we smoked there were merely just for passing time and chilling out, which of course is the main reason we usually smoke, but this spot tells us that there can be much more to it. Each crumbled pillar tells a story of a different blunt, some larger, some smaller, but all smoked nonetheless. Their breakage leaves an opening though, like it was made for looking out to the oceanic horizon. As the sun gleams across the water's surface, it directs the tide with it, moving in toward the land, rushing in a sea of knowledge to our open minds, where the great pillars of stubbornness and unwillingness to change have been broken down and smoked into stumps. With a newfound glory in liquid thoughts, we embrace one last philosophical pillar pull before we move on with our emblazoned ideas. Remembering the old days at number 10 is the Lordran light-up. As we begin to take a direction, we notice these bright distant trees. However, one of them to the south seems like it might be the closest, so why not head over to see it up close? Roaming over the rolling hills, we pass a few people along the way who all seem to be smoking clearly the wrong stuff because they just won't let up in trying to attack us. This goes especially for this bridge that we happen across. It's guarded heavily by these smoke soldiers, but they ain't no smoke associates of mine. So whether by outsmoking each of them, or just by sprinting past, we make it to the other side, where we deserve a small break. After catching a breath and stretching out those legs, we come up to the side of the gap that's remedied by the bridge. Staring down at the dormant waves below, there's a sense of familiarity to it all. Pondering on it behind a roach, it starts to become clear as the smoke dissipates around us. The rocky chasm, the flooded basin, the stone towering that breaks to individual bricks at its corners. It's all so reminiscent of Lordran. It takes us back to our first smoke journey together. Seeing a design like this, even if it just exists in this isolated part of the world, it's not too far-fetched to imagine that the building techniques behind this bridge's construction shares the same green roots as those from the first Dark Smoke journey. How's that for humble beginnings? Promoting up at number 9 is the Turtle Tower Puffing Power. Taking a swift drag from our journey's past, we move on and into a small valley. A giant enemy stations itself in the corner. Meanwhile, the path ahead is littered with bodies and a broken caravan. This whole stretch of road is nothing but trouble, so we pass by quickly. Soon enough though, the orange flames of a campfire guides us to a safe getaway. It's occupied by, thankfully, a new friendly face who recommends us to take our horse up this windy stream and into the tower roof. Inside these heightened walls there are many things, barrels and racks filled with weapons untouched, but this is not why we dropped in. There's a reason why I brought us here. We take our time safely atop this walled tower peak to grind up and roll some dubs before we toke it up and get moving again. These weapons may be used to briefly train with if it feels necessary, but the most important part of this smoke spot lies with the former chief of this smoke ring. It is within my power to bestow this gift upon all of you who've journeyed with me this far. The Turtle Shell. With this equipment you have lots more room to store smoking materials and other helpful items, as well as making you an official Smoke Ninja Turtle. This is a time of promotion, and so this spot now advances to Turtle Power Puffing Tower. And now we shall proceed. Forever forward at number 8 is a past land's chunk of sand. Fitting our shelled encasing, we search forth just like a newly born turtle of the coast, and we discover a tall Turtlanic castle. The stretch won't be easy, but leaving the mother's beach to find Soak in a new place never is. The path is guarded by a titan archer who seeks to puncture our chest and our will. But the gates lay just behind him. Proceeding unto this well-damned fortress, we face foes with wings and weapons, but we are far too tough to be taken down that easily. After the struggle, we find grace upon a cliff edge where we look down at the smoke spot in question. This chunk was chipped from the rocks of Drang Lake where we smoked up on our second journey. We are drawn down the rocks and bricks to find a yellow gate that serves to stop our smoky state and stand the sands that still aren't safe. Filtrating the flax we find, the fair and forgotten misbegotten. He says, "'Tis a lonely place, this ground of mine, for I'll never forget my former land. But I won't fall, no, not I, for all these ghosts guide my hand. Every witch that cast a stone and every man who fought alone can see my foreign homesick face, and so they grant me guiding grace. This isle of home invades the world, and so I defend my peace. but I wish someone with smoke would come and grant me heavenly peace. Now, it's up to us to lay this warrior to rest among the dead graves of his homely friends. Once he is outsmoked, we blaze up with the grave of his homeland itself, as it seems time has forgotten this leaking land's land. The center of the headstone is an outline of a giant's hooded face, so it's important that when you're done with the J, you leave it inside so the ghosts may have their time to smoke too. Returning to the path at number 7 is puffing cane at the Pilgrimage Church. We have found a good smoke spot at the coast of this castle, and we have smoked upon, technically, the shores of a distant land. But now we must retighten our sights. Returning to where we came from, we take an uphill side route towards the large glowing tree. We pass a maddened populace and across a shaky bridge. But before we know it, we look at the church that beckons us to rest within its walls and take a smoke break. Entering inside, we see it's no more or less destroyed than any other church we've seen or will see moving forwards. Outside is a humble graveyard that contains a couple of restless undead who care not for smoking. They live on through the hate they hold for the devil's lettuce and all who may smoke it at this church, so it's best not to engage. However, if we take a small climb, we will emerge on a familiar sight. We had previously seen these broken pillars from a different cliff edge, but this time we are getting an alternate look. Same as before, we see the waves rushing in to the sands of thought, but now we have a better look at a waterfall which represents our own giving back of knowledge and experience into the already vast ocean. It seems like it isn't making a difference, but trust me, smoke ninjas, it is. And the waterfall of our inner thoughts and knowledge never ceases to flow, lest we be drowned in self-doubt. Remember, always use our smoke time to open up that glorious mind of yours. I guarantee you'll be surprised at what you can find. Falling entranced at number 6 is the Light Up Leaf Light Up. Leaving the church's premises, we are dawned by the towering tree. Each leaf that lantern's lemon light holds a heavenly hand that foretells our feet to march and march until we trace the tower's trunk and reckless roots. We come face to face with the Guardian's place, stomping and crushing and vigorously rushing to deface our face, where we may never take grasp nor hold of the magic tree's gold. But once it whiffs and we roll a spliff, we lung a song sung so long that we mistake the voice for a wind device that creates the sound that mimics round Madon's pipes that sings so right a language erased but still embraced. Alas, the Cairo terror that yells as terror is a masked animal so insatiable it bellows words that will be heard by a lonesome one that needs someone to shade the sun of hell find spun.
Nos destinatem matribus nunc fiunt urbes ploravimus lacrimavimusque sed nemunus consulatur aureum cuirat.
Underground at number 5, we've got the Stronghold Hotbox. It seems we've awoken from a strange dream. There's an impending redness that waits to heat our flesh with hellish embers, but that isn't here and isn't now. So until we face such a gravely place, we'll press on from where we left off. Returning back further inland, there's a swampy pool that doesn't offer much, except a deadly doobie dragon, so it'd be wise to head swiftly towards the cave entrance in the distance. On approach, we can smell the gold like Mr. Krabs behind his burly desk at rush hour. Taking the elevator, it's clear that we will need to stay on alert for these elevated floor changes, as it's easy to lose your way like that. However, if we do indeed keep our eyes peeled, we can find some elevator jump-off points that can lead us towards this wooden gated stronghold. Inside it is a giant enemy who stands in the way of our hotbox, so he will require an outsmoking first. After he's been dealt with, we've now opened up a perfect communal smoke area. That is, for those of us who can actually find our way down here. The minimum number of bud buddies you want to have with you here is 3 if you want to take maximum advantage of what this place has to offer. By lighting the end of your doobie with a brazier flame, and your 3 bud buddies doing the same with the other 3 fires, the ore in the center releases its own gaseous exhale, fueling the ensuing hotbox. But things can get really smoky really quick though, in which case don't hesitate to take this shortcut out of the cave. Tackling the hills at number 4 is the shadow of a great Toke Tower. After we get out from that glorious hotbox, we mount our trusty steed and begin to take forward momentum towards a great structure. It's not too dissimilar to the broken and jagged remains that make up the philosophy pillars that we observed at Smoke Spot 11 and 7. Things feel like they're getting more stormy as we approach the large struts. Each windy push tries to slow us, but we continue until we are close enough to see the mossy leaves hanging from between the bricks that make up each column. We now stand at this misty cliffside in the shadow of this tall Toke Tower that has become veiled in a cloak of greyness. Perhaps this haze is cast by whatever is going on atop this very tower. And furthermore, perhaps we will soon be the ones casting the haze. But as it stands, we merely get high beneath this enormous tower. While we get faded here, it's interesting to ponder at what the construction of these large buildings could have looked like, and maybe who it was that actually built them. As we patrol around this tall grass, we stumble over pieces of large lived beings that only exist as ruins now. But for the keen-eyed stoners, it's recognizable as the same type of being that was guarding the Turtle Coast Castle in Smoke Spot number 8. But it's important that we be careful where we step in this smoke spot, because one of these piles of ruined beings might not be quite as ruined as the rest. Sneaking in at an honourable mention is the dank doorway and the pot pier. Leaving our previous spot and sticking to this rock wall, we find a strange entryway into these catacombs. Inside it, through some exploration, we can find a katana, suitable for any aspiring smoke ninja to wield and use to defend the grass that the hardened shells in their backs hold in storage. Eventually, there's an orange flame that guides us to a lever, and once we pull it, a doorway at the entrance will be unlocked. So, after a quick sprint back, we face a new smoke opponent. He may be a little tough, but I believe in our victory. Once we are victorious, we now stand in this empty arena, filled with bones and those long outsmoked and amalgamated in the roots at the end of the room. But where these lost souls vacuum our hope, we find a way to replenish it. After leaving through the dank doorway, we ponder those lost lives at this rocky edge just outside, and would you look at that? There's something, or someone, stuck over there on the other side. Up close we find it's a friend in smoke, our Pot Pier.
Anyone? Just give me a good smack from the rear with something nice and big.
It takes no time at all to help release him from his position, and we are filled back up with hopeful smoke. If we're lucky, he may just reward us with a little pot puffing for our efforts. But regardless, we now indeed have a friend in weed. Terribly trekking at number 3 is the deserved double feature Doobie. From where we found our new Pot Pier, we move southwest to enter the challenge of Margot's Misery. This is precisely the point where many a smoke ninja have fallen and become hollow. But not this time, not us. We are from the clan of Smoke, and as long as smoke exists in this world, so shall we. We take our time here, but in the end, we impress our eternity upon this foul smoke opponent. We rest, wipe clean the blood of our blades and fell omen flesh from our faces, and we push on, with veiled storm to Stormvale Castle. Legging to the left, we use the castle's destroyed sides as our path forward, walking brick and cliffside to find an interior, coated with concoctive containers that could explode at any moment's notice. Luckily, a ladder lifts us to where we catch the main view from the upcoming smoke spot, which lies a great fall beneath us. Entering the tower, we can get some rest, but we need to turn back and catch this wooden elevator that can finally show us the goods. Out here, in this secluded location, is the perfect place for us to let our guard down for just a few minutes and smoke up together. The main attraction is the impossibly formed rock teeth that backs a shelter and figure statued but lacks the common fortitude of walls and moats, for these teeth tote no true land connection for any hostile objection. As for the double feature, we find 2 perfect spots to sit and smoke searely, a smoulder sincerely. The first spot takes a little bit of jumping skill, but once you get it, this broken apart rampart works perfectly as a nice bridge to air, while providing a decent angle to sit opposite your bud buddies as you toke. The other spot merely asks a short walk, where we can lay and stay in this tall unkept grassy bushel that contentively complements this autumn-leaved tree. In fact, if you're low on smoking materials, I believe this wild grass can work as a nice substitute, and there is plenty to cut and use from. So after all, and after such a trek, I'm glad to present this area with 2 very viable smoke spots for us to use before continuing our journey. High up at number 2 is the top of the Great Toke Tower. From where we had our rest spot before we smoked up, there's a different wooden lift that goes down. after which we stare into a butchered hall, watched over by a great axe wielder stuck behind paint. Heading left to get outside, then sticking to the right, we can find our way down multiple stairs, and we path our way to a prestigious opening. In the distant skyline, we recognize a familiar tower. Intruding the bridge between, we awaken the dormant giant ancients as they stand guard for their forgotten mission. What they are protecting is a small teleportation gateway that tunnels us from that small artifact to the base of the Great Togue Tower. As we brace through the tall, heavy door, we take the spacious lift up and up until we reach the lower platform of the tower's peak. From this new vantage point, we scout many landmarks, interesting geography, and even 2 more skyscraping Togue towers. Making our way around and upwards one final time, we come to the center of this high point. There's 2 decrepit and dead fingers that lay lifelessly, but it is said that at one point in history, these fingers were fast at grinding up weed, and even faster at rolling it. As we get closer, we can hear a noise emanating from within the dead skin. It sounds like music. But before we can identify what tune is being tuned, a voice whispers, created by the wind blowing through the hairs. It says we must return here to experience some MJM, but only once Godrip the Grafted is outsmoked. I can only assume MJM means marijuana music, but Godrip? Could that be the same axe wielder that frightened our footsteps earlier on across that painted canvas? Only time can tell us. And also, I just want to note, if any of you can't enter this tower to begin with, I'd say defeating Godrip is exactly the thing that will grant you access to this tower. So, no matter how you slice it, all of us will be able to reach this tower's peak potential upon returning from our number 1 spot. So let's get going, shall we? Smoking victoriously at number 1 is Throne and Pot for All You've Got. After returning to the fortress and sticking to our right, we pass many hostile defenders. They spit flames and wield steel, but they cannot stop the steam engine that is the Smoke Clan advance. We take a quick rest, then up on a wooden lift we find our way down a cracked floor. We discover the glow of a final rest spot before we take on the smoke challenge ahead. It is the one and only Godrip the Grafted. We must enter his domain and show him the unending force, determination, and persistence of the Smoke Clan as we battle our way to outsmoking this furious foe. In the wake of the smoking grounds, now ashen with the dust of the winds of Godrip, we proceed to find a well-decorated throne that simply invites us to take a seat. Upon this glorious chair we take a nicely rested toke from Godrip's squandered grass left behind. Of course, smoking upon this high chair is a hell of a feeling, but I like another spot better. After we've taken down Godrip together, we can head just to the side and find his own personal pot room. As we walk in and gather around, you'll notice a faint smell of extinguished blazes. Within each of these pots is the origin of this scent. So by rolling through and breaking these containers, you'll find well-kept pottery pot. Sprinkle just a little bit of this stuff into whatever you're rolling, and you will feel like Godrip himself as you spark and blow a wonderful whirlwind as we all start smoking up a storm. Now that we have outsmoked Godrip and have taken up his leftover materials, we can head back to the top of that tall Toke Tower to find what lies in wait. Returning to, and for most finally being granted access to, the amazing skyscraping view, we hear something of an instrument, or instruments upstairs. Each small set of stairs we walk up turns our minds around, trying to figure out what it is that's vibrating out in waves from the peak of this tower. Turning to the opening of the openness, we are re-graced with sound-laced music from the Erd Tree that's heard free. And wait a second, I know this tune. Hold on, when that voice said MJM, it didn't mean marijuana music. It meant Michael Jackson music. Well, I know better than to interrupt a Michael Jackson song, so this concludes our first entry into the Elden Smoke Journal. Thank you all for joining me on this jubilant journey of joyous joints. I'll see you at the next sesh, and I trust that you won't go hollow out there, because after all, that is human nature. Thanks for watching.
They say why?